play Sonic Generations.
I literally just sat down.
Care, play Sonic Generations.
Didn't you get your video already this year?
Hey, you mentioned playing Sonic, so you knew this was gonna come back to you. I mean, the movie's coming out. This just makes sense.
Well, I'm not doing Sonic today. I actually was going to do Mega Man 11 because, well, it's the 11th special review, so that's a reason, right?
Come on, man. Even you know that Sonic will do well in views. I mean, it just makes sense. Plus, it's Christmas.
I guess.
Now, let's get started.
Oh, Sonic, you lovable blue asshole. You've had quite a legacy that has persisted over the last 30 years. From the 2D era that was a system seller and made people actually want to buy a Genesis, to a transition to 3D which has a major following and is a tired meme that needs to die in a fire, to what we have now which is all over the place ranging from stuff that's good to bad, some confusing, and this. I myself became a huge fan of the franchise after 2013, I want to say, and it was all thanks to this man who you can catch on the card up top. I knew the series beforehand by seeing people play Sonic Adventure 2 Battle for the GameCube and renting episodes of the Sonic X anime, which, boy, that did not age well. Despite all that, my first time playing one of these games was not even a Sonic game at all, but it was Shadow the Hedgehog for the PS2. But also for actual Sonic, it was Heroes and this Genesis collection that I had as a kid.
So you could say my history with Mr. Needlemouse has been all over the place, just like his franchise. So, let's get into the actual game in question.
So 2011 marked the 20th anniversary of Sonic, and Sega decided to have modern Sonic crossover with his younger and puddier self, classic Sonic. I'm guessing the general consensus was mostly positive, and it helped that Sonic Colors was good enough to ensure some good graces with the fanbase. The game released on November 1st of that year, and still remains one of the highest rated and well regarded games in the series, with this being one of my personal favorites. Since I'm in a Sonic mood lately with the release of the remaster for this game and the newly released third movie, I wanted to look back at this game and see how well it actually holds up in my eyes and see if this gives you enough interest to get you playing the games. Swifty. So I'm playing the 360 original, but I'll be quickly going over the recent Sonic X Shadow Generations on the PS5.
Alright, let's get into the story on display. This amazing, non-stupid... I'm just beating a dead horse at this point.
We begin with a surprise party for Sonic, held by most of his friends in attendance. Right before Sonic can eat more of his birthday chili dog, this big monster known as the Time Eater shows up and steals his friends and gives the Blue Blur a super bitch slap. After passing out, he soon wakes up in this white void with him running to what looks like Green Hill Zone and frees Tails from being a colorless statue. After a few stages, he meets up with his past self and the two of them team up to collect the Chaos Emeralds and take on this timeline meddling monster. Before the final fight, we learn that Dr. Eggman was the one responsible for causing this mess, and he wasn't alone as he had help from his previous counterpart, Dr. Robotnik.
Nobody calls me that anymore.
That's the name you'll continue to go by, you pathetic piece of shit.
The two hedgehogs are no match for this thing, but with the power of friendship, they go super and absolutely demolish those fat fuckers. We cut back to the party with classic Sonic running back to his own time and us realizing that the next game after this is Lost World. Damn.
So you might be wondering, why was that so short for a story recap? That's pretty much an indicator for what we're about to go into.
The game has a very nothing story. Aside from the opening and up until the end, most of what you'll be doing is just going from stage to stage. There's some cutscenes throughout that has the Time Eater showing up for a second to say "sup bitch," but that's basically all you're getting. Seeing as how this was an anniversary game dealing with past events and that this was being written by the same people who did Colors, there were so many missed opportunities to jab and reference some things, but they just do absolutely nothing and it's kind of disappointing. Maybe there's some behind the scenes stuff I'm not aware of, but in general I like the setup and the premise, but the execution could have used a ton more work.
Okay, so now we're getting to the good stuff with the gameplay.
So we have two different gameplay styles we're working with, which one is a 2D recreation of the Genesis games, and the other is a continuation of the boost formula that was first introduced in Sonic Unleashed. Starting with Classic Sonic, it doesn't quite feel how it was in the Genesis games, but what is here is still enjoyable. He still has his figure 8 feet as he's running, and his spin dash, which is quite powerful and super fun to abuse. One thing that he can't do, which I loved doing in the older games, was rolling down slopes. He doesn't pick up any speed and it just slows to a crawl, which is so disappointing. Even if it isn't perfect, what we still have is pretty fun. While it may feel a little stiff to control, he's close to what I imagined from the older games, and there's nothing like using the spin dash to launch at 600 miles per hour. Modern Sonic, like I said, keeps the boost formula, but here it's absolutely perfected. He's still homing attacks like nobody's business, can quick step to avoid upcoming obstacles, and the rush of blazing past everything in front of you is just divine. Gotta say too, it's really satisfying drifting around tight corners and going through these rainbow rings where you can do tricks to fill up the boost meter. With that said, nothing has really changed compared to Unleashed, but this is by far the most fun you'll have. Keeping the boost going while you're smashing through badniks and avoiding obstacles is just plain addicting, and I'm constantly replaying levels to see if I can get to the end of the stage much faster. For power-ups, there's speed shoes and invincibility, which kind of explains itself, and there's more you can buy from the skill shop. In the skill shop, you can find all sorts of upgrades like increasing your speed, holding your breath underwater longer, but this is where you can also equip stuff like the elemental shields from the older games, Time Break, and Supersonic, which you both unlock after beating the game. Each of these upgrades are worth trying out at least once, and it's nice customizing your own movesets to fit your preference.
Now for the other stuff, and we have a laundry list to go over.
There are 9 levels to blast through from 3 different eras, with both acts split between both hedgehogs. Each level represents a stage from Sonic's past, and each from the mainline games up until that point, and for the most part it's a fine selection. From the Genesis era we have Green Hill, Chemical Plant, and Sky Sanctuary. For the Dreamcast era there's Speed Highway, City Escape, and Seaside Hill. Finally, for the modern era, we have Crisis City, Rooftop Run, and Planet Wisp. Even though there's an abundance of city levels, I think they made the right choice for most of these picks. I don't know if I would change anything personally, but I commend that each game got its own slice of the action. The level design is also really top notch. For most of the game. Up until the modern era, it's all smooth sailing, and then it starts to take a nosedive with Planet Wisp being the worst of it. It's way too long and can be extremely difficult at points.
Some playtester messed up big time, I guess.
Within the levels themselves are red rings making a return from Sonic Colors. They just unlock artwork, music, and such, so if you're down to collect them, you can sure go for it. After clearing the 3 levels from an era, these challenge missions open up, and these vary in quality. They range from Knuckles helping you dig up coins, or Rouge giving Eggman's robots boners, to racing a ghost version of yourself, or just making it through a random obstacle course. They are mostly optional, but you need to do at least one from each zone to acquire a boss key. For bosses we have the rival battles and recreations from previous threats. For rivals we have Metal Sonic, Shadow, and Silver, and for the main bosses there's the Death Egg Robot, Perfect Chaos, and the Egg Dragoon from Unleashed. They're all really fun, with Shadow and the Death Egg Robot as my favorites. The Egg Dragoon is my least favorite of the bunch because I always have the shittiest luck when I fight him. One cool extra I wanted to mention was you can buy this Genesis controller, and that allows you to play Sonic 1, which I just find really neat. There's DLC in the form of the Casino Night pinball table, and it's kinda cool. I like pinball, but honestly I would have preferred an actual stage instead. And honestly, I'll take my 3D pinball Space Cadet over this any day. Graphics are really nice to look at and hold up rather well. This is running on the fabled Hedgehog engine that was introduced in Unleashed, and it looks just as good as it did there. The soundtrack is fantastic, with some nice original pieces and a wide selection of remixes from artists like Crush 40, Cash Cash, and Circuit Freak. I hope I pronounced that name right. Some favorites of mine include Classic City Escape, Supersonic Racing, Modern Rooftop Run, the 3D Blast theme, and the list just goes on and on and on.
So I guess it's time to go over the latest release with the Blue Blur with Sonic X Shadow Generations.
Can I join in for this?
Let me think about it. No.
Ah, humbug.
Be happy we did that collab earlier this year and that I'm even considering doing Metroid Prime with you.
I can live with that.
Great. Anyway, let's get into the game.
Man, this was not on my bingo card for this year. Seeing this live with Swifty during the state of play was quite a surprise, and I was really excited that they were bringing Generations to newer systems. But I was also really interested to see what they were going to do with Shadow himself. As the months went on and more trailers released, I was very excited to give the Shadow campaign a shot and to see what this would add to the original game. This would be released on October 25th, and you know damn well I got that digital deluxe edition when I did, and just this past Black Friday I bought a physical copy for my shelves.
I really couldn't help myself. But let's get into the game itself.
Let's start with Sonic Generations, and honestly we're going to be quick with this. There's not much to go over, but there are some very substantial changes that were made here. Visually and gameplay wise, it's identical. Graphics are slightly touched up, which is nice, and they do change the controls up, which isn't too bad to adjust to, but you can also switch it back to the original control scheme. The game also runs at a smooth 60 frames per second, which is wonderful, but it's nothing new if you've been playing on PC or the newer Xbox consoles. They added the drop dash from Mania, which is a neat inclusion, and they removed lives, which I don't mind at all. Each act now features 3 of these Chow to collect, which is nice to the people that are into that thing, but I'm not one of them.
Man, Chow Garden fans must be cringing at the fact Sega won't do anything with that.
The biggest change is the rewrite from Ian Flynn from the IDW comics, and the re-recorded dialogue, which I know it's supposed to make it feel closer to the later games, but me personally I'm not 100% sold on it yet. Maybe when I get around to a full playthrough or revisit it, it might sway me, but we'll just have to see with that. Lastly, they added skins for both Classic and Modern Sonic, and these are pretty cool. Modern has this SA1 skin, and Classic has a skin based on the Sonic Jam model, which is a great callback. Hopefully they'll be available for everyone soon, since one is a pre-order bonus and the other you can get only from the newsletter. How odd.
Now let's check the other side of this coin. Ooh, heads.
Since the game is fairly recent, I won't spoil anything massive, but the game begins with Shadow back on the space colony Ark to investigate a disturbance, when all of a sudden Black Doom shows up out of nowhere and sends us to Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. After clearing that out of the way, Shadow finds the fake emerald from Sonic Adventure 2, and that's when the Time Eater shows up and sends Shadow to the White Void. So now it's up to us to figure out what the deal is and to stop Black Doom before he can fully revive himself. Gameplay is a blast with all sorts of abilities and it feels great to control. The boost is powerful and everything feels super responsive. As far as abilities, there's Chaos Control, which is useful to stop things in their tracks, and the Chaos Spears, which feel a little finicky to use, but that's just me. They also have these Doom powers which you get over the course of the game, and I don't want to give these away for this video. Level design is broken between 2 acts, with the first being purely 3D and the second being 2D. I loved the 3D levels that I played, but the 2D levels were kinda the opposite. They weren't bad or anything, they just didn't have that wow factor that the Act 1 levels did. The hub world is completely 3D this time and is purely explorable, which is cool. They give you stuff to do like small challenges, and there's collectibles to find like these crates to unlock, and bolts for Orbot and Cubot, and these are not fun. Boss doors are reworked a bit, and I don't like what they did. First you have to discover the door to open up the missions, and then you need to do more than one mission in order to get the key, which is just padding in its purest form. Speaking of bosses, I did the Bio-Lizard and that was good, and way better than what you fought in SA2. Visually the game looks amazing, but it's a shame that the music didn't stick with me like Sonic Generations did. If you pre-ordered the digital deluxe edition like I did, you got access to the Terrio skin for Shadow, and it's cool to see in action, but I'm really glad Sonic Team didn't go with this back in the day. In the middle of working on this video, they released the movie pack, which I didn't get around to record, but it's awesome that they got Keanu Reeves to voice Shadow for this. In general, Sonic X Shadow Generations is an amazing package and is worth getting. You already have the greatness that is Sonic Generations, but you also get a new game that is just as good and could potentially be better. I love the new skins and 60 FPS for Sonic, and Shadow is worth it for the powers to mess around with and the fantastic 3D level design. For Sonic fans, you owe yourself to get this, and this is a great way to get yourselves absorbed into the franchise. This is a wonderful time that is worth having in your collection.
Now we have come to the end with my final thoughts.
Sonic Generations is a great time from beginning to end, and is hands down my favorite Sonic game, period. The story may be a weak point and the missions don't tickle my fancy, but everything else more than makes up for it. I love the gameplay for both classic and modern Sonic. The levels, aside from Planet Wisp, are stellar to blast through, and the music keeps me tapping my feet the whole time. I love replaying stages when I'm in the mood to, and I'm always listening to tracks on my off time or when I'm editing. I love this game's remixes so much. Despite my complaints I can't recommend this enough to anybody looking for a fun time, and this is within the ranks of being one of my favorite games ever. If you see this for any console or if you have a Steam account, it's worth its asking price. Wanna go fast? Then you gotta go with this.
So, about that Metroid Prime.
It'll happen. Later.
When exactly, Marveled Boy?
Ooh, Marvel's starting to get pissed.
Alright. So after your next video then.
You can leave, which is probably your best move right now.
Got it. Leaving now.
Whew, glad there's no more distractions.
Last of Us Part 2. Alright, fine. I know when I'm not needed.
So we're kind of doing a bit of a non-scripted ending thing here with the video. Firstly, I just wanted to say happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever, to everybody. Hope you are, getting gifts or giving gifts to your friends and family and all that sort of deal. And hopefully this video comes out on Christmas or shortly after. Yeah, this is, I know the last couple months have been kind of not really content heavy, but, things happen, our lives just kind of go on with, jobs and all that stuff, so, I'm sorry. Hopefully for the next year, we have some pretty interesting things to go over, and I got a lot of stuff on the table as of the first few months. There's stuff that I want to do as far as revisited. I was thinking of doing another reported, because that one was fun to edit despite the fact that that game sucked, Green Lantern. And yeah, I just want to make as many videos as possible for the next year. And I think also I kind of want to do a bit of a makeover, let's say. But that's all stuff to figure out for the new year. But until then, I don't know if I have a New Year's video planned. But anyway, I hope you all have a great night. Thank you all so much for watching, and take care of yourselves.
Hey, you mentioned playing Sonic Generations, so you... No. That's no good.